It's Tom Pelissero, our friend and frequent guest host of this program, back here on the Rich Eisen Show as an NFL media insider calling in. How are you, Thomas?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are the boys in the studio doing?
Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about.
What's up,
Tom
baby?
and P?
Hey, now you
What
know.
up, kid?
Look at you throwing
That's what's up.
Look at you throwing out the red
That's
meat
my
to
dog.
start. Look at him throwing
That's
out
my dog.
the red meat to start.
Baby.
Look at you. Look at you.
Oh,
They're doing fine, in case you haven't wondered.
We're great.
thanks.
good.
Good. Thanks for
How are
asking,
you,
Tom.
buddy?
How you doing, Tom?
You just had a birthday recently, right?
I did have a birthday a couple days ago.
21 years
and
old.
of course, you know, my birthday being on March 6th means inevitably there's always news that ruins the evening. So on Monday it was, Smith's contract getting done, which I was dealing with over dinner. But no, other than that, I'm just like everybody else in the NFL world right now, bracing for impact.
Aha. The impact of what? What are you bracing for, Tom? What's on top of your mind right now?
Well, at this moment, it would be what happens with Aaron Rodgers, which is going to set the table for a lot of other things. Here's what I can tell you at this moment on Aaron Rodgers. And, Rich, by the time I'm even done with this sentence, this could change, but this is where it stands as of this moment in time right now. The Jets went out there to California on Tuesday to meet with Aaron Rodgers. They sent a contingent of people. The Jets want Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback. The Jets have thought through what they're willing to do, draft pick-wise, contract-wise, everything else. And if Aaron Rodgers comes to the Packers and says, I want to be traded to the Jets, then they are open to working with him to make that a reality and then moving forward with Jordan Love. The key piece of this, as it has been throughout this entire saga, is that Aaron Rodgers has not yet told the Packers and Jets what he wants to do. He has publicly said that everything's on the table between going back to Green Bay, playing for another team, even retiring. He's got $60 million almost fully guaranteed this year, and he has effective veto power over any trade. So it's really in Aaron's hands to make the first move here, depending what his decision is. There's some additional conversations that need to take place either between the Packers and Aaron Rodgers or the Packers and the Jets, or in the retirement saga, Aaron and his inner circle, if he's moving forward. But in terms of what actually happens here, this is now up to Aaron. And as of right now, again, could change before the end of your show. As of right now, Aaron has not told the teams what he wants to do.
And so there's already something that when you said the Jets have communicated what they're comfortable doing, have they essentially, Gutekunst and Joe Douglas struck a deal where all it is just Aaron saying, I'd like to go, and they know exactly how much, the Jets know exactly how much the Packers are willing to eat of his contract themselves, and thus the sliding scale of the draft choice that would be going back to, or choices that would be going back to Green Bay are already been hammered out, or that's something that still hasn't been hammered out and could be a snag, and the Packers suddenly want more because they know the Jets have already put it all out there. I'm asking about, I guess, the nuts and bolts, how much that's already been hammered out, best you can tell or know.
To my knowledge, there was not a deal in place. But certainly the Packers giving Aaron Rodgers permission to speak to the Jets would indicate that the Packers feel like the Jets will negotiate in good faith in a really unusual situation with a single bidder, a player who will only go one place, and a contract that, if it's still sitting on the Packers' books come next Wednesday, has a significantly different cap impact than if he's not on the roster. So the clock is ticking. There's no doubt about it. For Aaron Rodgers, for the Packers, even for the Jets, who, they obviously had a productive meeting with Derek Carr. That was a real possibility for him. He ended up going to the Saints. If they miss out on Aaron Rodgers, they're going to have to pivot yet again to whatever that possibility might be. And they've been very clear they're going to add a veteran quarterback. So now you're into the Jimmy Garoppolos, potentially Lamar Jackson. Is it Baker Mayfield? There's a lot of different ways that you could go, but you're going to want answers here. That negotiating window opens up on Monday. That's 4 days away right about this time. And free agency officially begins 2 days after that. So whatever happens here, I anticipate that it's not going to be much longer because everybody would be put into a bind, specifically the Packers and the Jets, if Aaron carries this beyond the weekend.
So any indication of what was discussed at this dinner? Jets selling Rodgers on the idea of going to New York, just getting his idea of how much they'd see of him in the offseason, anybody that he'd want to have added to the roster. I mean, what did they talk about other than, hey, what are the specials at Lucky in Malibu?
I would fairly say all aspects of a potential Jets-Aaron Rodgers marriage were discussed in those meetings. And, Aaron has obviously a very close relationship with Nathaniel Hackett. That was his guy for the few years Hackett was in Green Bay. He's the offensive coordinator now with New York. So in terms of what the offense looks like and things like that, those two already know what it would look like.
Well, that's a big piece. That's a huge piece.
Hackett knows it well.
That's a huge piece.
It's all the other things and getting comfortable with a new organization. That's where, I think that I understand where people say, what is taking so long? But you think about it, Aaron's been with one team for 18 years. That's his entire adult life. He spent with one team since the time he was 20, 21 years old. He's never experienced anything else. So it makes perfect sense that you'd want to get to know the owner and the team president and the GM, obviously the head coach, who happens to have had Matt LaFleur, the Packers coach, as the best man in his wedding. So, and you go back 15 years, they also did the same thing with another Packers quarterback in Brett Favre. And I was working at the Green Bay Press-Gazette at that point, and it was an all-night type of a negotiation. And one of the ways that they closed Brett Favre was by offering up and showing him pictures of this land outside the city where he could go hunting on his off days.
Yeah.
So whatever the equivalent of hunting land was to Brett Favre, whatever the equivalent of that is to Aaron Rodgers, I would imagine within, of course, the bounds of the salary cap, that the Jets would roll out. Here's the answers to every one of your questions. We want you to feel comfortable. Absolutely. They want Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback. Aaron now has to sit back, take that information in, and figure out exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah, they have two darkness caves. They're called the Holland and Lincoln Tunnel. And if you go there between the hours of 4 to 7 p.m., you can really, it's a long-ass stay, I mean.
You've been there for 4 days.
I cannot believe the Jets are in this position right now. I cannot believe that this is actually happening. So what's your best guess? Give me your best guess. Tea leaves, everything all together. And I know that Rodgers has pointed out nobody knows what's going on in his world. And he's even mentioned our friend Ian Rappaport is exactly one of those people. So what do you got for me? What do you got? What do you think?
Well, I'm glad that Ian caught the shot on that, since my name was also on that story, but it was Ian's piece of information that was inaccurate in terms of the timeline. So I appreciate that Aaron somehow realized who was at fault on that.
Good for you.
Decided to go after him and not me.
Way to go.
I honestly don't know. And no one else does. I've talked to practically everybody involved earlier today.
Right.
Everybody is waiting. Now, I think that logically, it's always seemed unlikely that everything would line up for Aaron Rodgers to be back in Green Bay, simply because of the situation with Jordan Love, because of the direction that the roster might be going, because of just the point in time that we're at. It's made sense that this might be where Aaron Rodgers really moves on. But I just don't know. I mean, he's a unique individual. There's not a lot of people who would go through this type of a process to figure out what they want to do. Whatever he feels after doing whatever it is he has to do to feel it, that's what he's going to move forward with here.
Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, NFL Insider here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, where do you want to start with Lamar? How we got here, what's going on? I'll just give you the floor. Lamar Jackson, as things currently stand, the Thursday before the new league year, are?
We got here, Rich, because the Ravens have tried for more than a year, close to 2 years, to do a long-term contract with Lamar Jackson. And his base viewpoint on those conversations has always been, I'm better than all these quarterbacks. I should get more money than all of them. And that includes Deshaun Watson, who got a 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed contract last year from the Browns. That certainly did upset some people within the league because it rewrote the economics of the NFL. But I think it is a drastic oversimplification to look at reports that several teams were not interested in pursuing Lamar Jackson and alleging collusion or worse, racism or something else, some other factors at play. When Tom Brady, 3 years ago, the greatest player of all time, became a free agent, he had 2 offers. He had the Chargers and he had the Bucs. Some other teams, the Raiders poked around on it, but ultimately he had 2 teams that put in offers for him. And obviously he chose the Bucs and went there and won a Super Bowl. He was at an older stage in his career, but there were 2 teams. Last year with Deshaun Watson, and he was facing serious allegations of sexual misconduct. It didn't stop 4 teams from pursuing him. And ultimately the Browns were told, you're out. And they got back in by saying, we will go the extra mile and give you the fully guaranteed contract. We're coming up on free agency next week. If you've got a big market as an agent, that means you've got 3, 4, 5 teams at the most.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has all 32 teams. People say, well, why are these teams announcing that they're out? Well, first of all, you didn't see announcements. Nobody would announce it. But there are times that teams need to sculpt the environment of the fans, of the media. And in this case, with someone who is as accomplished and dynamic a player as Lamar Jackson, but in a complicated type of a situation to acquire him, if you're not in a place organizationally where you think you're going to do this, it makes sense to pour some cold water on it initially so you don't have a week's worth of speculation and media reports connecting you to the player, whatever team you're with, and then if everyone feel like it's a disappointment when you didn't land them. That's a fact of how the NFL works, which is there are some times where I or other people will get a call, hey, just so you know, we're not in on this. Everyone's saying we're in. Some doofus who's trying to make a name on Twitter reported we're in. We're not in. Just don't run with that. And I get that. And it's smart business because don't let people believe in some big idea that's totally impossible. With the quarterback position in particular, you're talking about years of planning in many cases in terms of what you're building around the quarterback, the draft capital you've put into a player, the development you've put into a player, the money you've put into a player. The idea that all 32 teams are going to shed their quarterback for anyone besides maybe Patrick Mahomes is just not in line with the reality here. With Lamar Jackson, again, unbelievably dynamic player. He is fun to watch when he's on, and he's won an MVP. To get him, you have to be able organizationally to say, we want to commit over 20% of our salary cap, 2 first-round draft picks for a player who, as good as he is, has suffered back-to-back lower body injuries that have ended his season, taking him out in December and January. And we're going to have to completely overhaul the way we play offense and the personnel to suit his unique skill set. Is somebody going to seriously consider this? I think a bunch of teams are going to seriously consider it. But that's a lot different than saying we're actually going to be able to go and not only give Lamar a contract he will take, which may well take the fully guaranteed contract because that's what he wants, but also one that the Ravens are not going to match. So we're not doing the work for Baltimore, which continues to say their priority is to get Lamar back on a long-term deal. You're also giving up the 2 first-round draft picks. It's a lot. Now, again, is there some team that may do it? It's absolutely possible. And I would anticipate that there are a bunch of teams having those exact conversations. But you better have a plan, you better have the resources, and you better believe that you can do something that nobody has done with a quarterback eating up that much of the salary cap, which is win a Super Bowl, if you're going to go all in this situation for Lamar Jackson.
Tom Pelissero, everybody, with a State of the Union address right there on Lamar Jackson. And I wholeheartedly understand and agree with you when it comes to, look, signing Lamar Jackson isn't just like a free agent where it costs you nothing draft compensation-wise. And signing Lamar Jackson isn't really going to be anything of an outlier from any other contract in the NFL, save one. And signing Lamar Jackson, you're not getting the 2019 version. You're getting the 2023 version, which did not finish the 2021 or 2022 seasons healthy. There is an incredible amount of moving parts and caveats and this and that. And so anybody out there saying, hey, nobody's jumping at him, there must be something fishy going on here, it's not all things being equal at all. And I know Richard Sherman threw out Joe Burrow's name out there. Joe Burrow, has none of everything that I just said. Also, what he doesn't have is an MVP. I understand that. So all things being equal, though, is why wouldn't a team just decide to say 2-1s and let's go talk to him and see if he'll take something less than the guaranteed offer? Part of the fear of that is you're doing the work for Baltimore, hammering out the deal that Baltimore didn't put on the table that they, upon further review, would be willing to take, because the other option would be drafting somebody from the deep 20s, which would not net them an immediate successor to Baltimore, to Lamar. Is that literally what is also a dynamic here? Did I pick that up?
Well, and let's
Tom?
be clear on something you mentioned there, Rich. I do anticipate teams are going to talk to Lamar Jackson and his mother, who's his advisor.
Right now, like literally right now.
They will have those conversations.
Yeah.
And just because 4 or 5 teams were reported to not be in, there are 32 teams, I'm pretty sure, still in the NFL. We've got a lot of other teams that are unaccounted for here. And why would you not have those conversations? In terms of the contract here and what Lamar Jackson wants, you've only had 2 fully guaranteed contracts for multi-year quarterback deals in recent NFL history. And it was Kirk Cousins, who had to play out 2 franchise tags in Washington to get there and got 3 years, $84 million from the Vikings. And it was Deshaun Watson, who had a multiple bidder situation that drove the price up to 5 years, $230 million fully guaranteed. Lamar Jackson, to this point, has never been able to have a multiple bidder situation. He's been in negotiation with one team. And because he does not have an agent, I think this is important to understand. He really does not have a gauge on the rest of the market. Yes, he can lean on the NFL Players Association, but a big part of what agents do year-round in these types of situations is, and remember, Rich, teams can tamper, agents technically can call whoever they want, and they do, to make sure they understand, hey, if he were to get out, what am I looking at someplace else? And you have relationships within the league, and you can figure out, okay, this is probably going to beat anything we're going to be able to get elsewhere. And you run the numbers and you figure out what is the best thing to do in this particular situation, absent any history, absent any other deal. Lamar hasn't really had that. And so the first time that he's going to be able to do that is next Wednesday, March 15th, because franchise players are not allowed to speak to teams prior to that.
Okay.
And then they will be able to, let's see who has meetings with Lamar Jackson. Let's see who goes down that road. Let's see who actually makes him an offer before we start screaming about collusion. I also think that Lamar's greatest leverage passed 2 years ago. And this is one of the reasons that having an agent would have helped him. And this is not an infomercial for agents here, Rich. I'm just saying.
Go for it.
No agent on the planet would have allowed Lamar Jackson to go out there and play for $1.7 million in 2021. As a former NFL MVP early in his prime, there is no way that anybody would have allowed him to go out onto the field. Everybody last year talked about Kyler Murray's agent, Eric Burkhardt, and making fun of his manifesto that he put out at the start of the combine. Kyler Murray ultimately got paid. Everybody got mad at the agent. They didn't really get as mad at the player during that entire summer. He ultimately got a significant deal. And sometimes those are the things that need to happen. Lamar played for 1.7. He came back and played the following year for $23 million. Again, something that if he had an agent, that agent would have said, there's no way we're doing this. We need the deal done now. Even if it's not fully guaranteed, with quarterback contracts, it's not really about the guarantees because those guys get released so rarely. It's about cash flow. And the sooner you can get the cash flowing, the sooner you get back to the bargaining table. So Lamar played for, over the last 2 years, $26 million. And if he ultimately ends up going back to Baltimore and playing on the one-year tag, he's made $60 million over 3. Daniel Jones is making $82 million over 2 years on his new contract, not because he's better than Lamar Jackson. The Ravens' offers to Lamar Jackson were far greater than what Daniel Jones got or what Derek Carr recently got or any of these quarterbacks. They were willing to offer it and get the money moving. Now, all of a sudden, he's 2 years further down the line, and if he doesn't take a deal this year, he has literally left tens of millions of dollars on the table. And that's without getting into the present time value of money and what high-level investment people can do with that money, how much money he could have made off the money over the last couple of years. He's put himself in a spot now where he's already behind. And even if ultimately he gets a fully guaranteed contract this year or next year, it's a Pyrrhic victory of sorts because of the money he already left on the table that would have given him the security that ostensibly he's seeking with a fully guaranteed deal. And I don't mean that as a criticism of Lamar. He can choose to do whatever he wants. And on some level, in this day and age, in this NFL, you respect someone who money doesn't seem to be the driving force behind everything that he's doing. So it's not that what he's doing is wrong per se, but if we're talking about the leverage to get what you want, that passed, man. That was 2 years ago. Now he's going into a different spot where he, at minimum, may be able to play these teams off each other like Deshaun Watson and his agent David Mulugeta did last year. Will they be able to do that as effectively as somebody who actually has an agent? We'll find out starting in a week or so.
All right, in the 2 minutes I have left, then, we have a list of 9 teams that we boiled everything down to. I removed the teams that don't have a first-round draft choice this year because, again, that's going to be technically a requirement. I guess you can get around it for Lamar's services just to negotiate for them right now. Teams who just don't need a new quarterback, teams that would blow everyone's mind for Lamar, that I don't believe would go for him. I got a list of 9 teams: Jets, Raiders, Texans, Titans, Colts, Falcons, Panthers, Bucks, Commanders. Who do you think next Wednesday would be most likely to ring his phone first? What do you think?
Well, I think that's one of the other factors here is I don't know that you have an obvious team. If the Jets miss out on Aaron Rodgers and knowing how big Woody Johnson wants to swing, I don't think that you can rule out that possibility of him ending up with the Jets, although you would think that would also be an offer sheet that the Ravens would potentially want to match. Washington would make some sense, but they're also in a position where the team may be sold. Does that increase the value of the team, having Lamar Jackson? And, Dan Snyder can guarantee some other owner's money, and some other owner could put that $180 million into escrow next March? Maybe. But it doesn't sound like that's on the front burner for them right now. The Colts have a vacancy. I don't know on that one. I don't have a clear answer on that. Obviously, San Francisco, Brock Purdy's surgery is coming up tomorrow.
They don't have a first rounder. They don't have a first rounder.
They don't have a first round pick as of now. So
right. Sure.
Obviously that's a complication for him. It's you don't have that clear. This is where he's going to land. But I think that with somebody who's this unique of a talent and a unique proposition, it may take someone with some foresight. I mean, I don't think that we went into last March, Rich, saying the Browns absolutely need an upgraded quarterback. The other teams that were in on it made sense. It was the Panthers. It was the Falcons once you realized that they were probably moving on from Matt Ryan. With the Browns, Baker Mayfield had been told he was going to be the quarterback. He got so ticked off that we broke into free agency frenzy so I could deliver the news he'd requested a trade. And that was after they were told they were out on Deshaun Watson. So it might be something that shakes loose that we're not even thinking about right now with Lamar. It's really going to depend on a lot of different factors, including when that negotiating window opens up on Monday, does anybody jump at Jimmy Garoppolo? Does Baker Mayfield land in this spot where he's got a shot to compete? You've got some guys on the street. You've got other trade possibilities. What happens with Aaron? We'll know a lot more by next Wednesday. Right now, it's kind of hard to project other than there are a bunch of teams that don't have a clear starter.
You're the man, Tom. A lot of food for thought. Greatly appreciate you delivering that to the fans and listeners and viewers of this show. Appreciate it. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
Be well. You got it. That's Tom Pelissero. Will be on NFL Network in probably about 10 seconds. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.